Wake up to Good Morning Uganda, weekdays on UBC.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Now, another day that has also been given unto us by God. Now, so many people in this country are still mourning someone, treating someone, or avoiding someone. That is the kind of life that we have been living at for the past almost a year and so probably and a half. That is the kind of life that we must work together towards getting out of. Now, there has been a drive that hashtag together we can defeat this, and probably something we should be trying out today. Now, as we start this week, also do want to remind you, everyone out there watching us or listening to us, that there's so much we have to do that is supposed to put us out of this situation while we are just running away from each other. This is not the kind of life we know. This is not who we are. Let us redefine our lives this time round by following every other thing to the dot that is supposed to prevent and also avoid the spread of COVID-19. My name is Nkunda Felix, and today is Good Morning Uganda. And I'm here with my colleagues, that is Priscilla and Robert. And I will start with you, Priscilla. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Felix Nkunda, but also good morning to you, all of Uganda. Thank you so much for having persevered through the past week after the President gave his directives. People have, in one way or another, found adherence to the new guidelines that were given, and they have been more observant than ever before. So kudos to you, my fellow Ugandans, for actually doing just what you were supposed to do earlier on. If we had done this earlier on, we wouldn't be experiencing the second wave of COVID-19. My name is Priscilla Nalwoga, and welcome aboard the 14th day of June 2021.
A lovely morning to you wherever you are, and thank you so much for beginning your day with us here on UBC. You are in the second wave, like my colleagues have said, and now the most important thing as you begin your day after that morning prayer is to ensure that you return home safe and sound. What do I mean? When you've not contracted COVID-19. And how do you do it? It's just perfecting the simple soaps that we are all aware of. Have your mask on, avoid crowded areas unless you must really be part of them, but also ensure that you carry a sanitizer, regular wash of your hands, and ensure that you do not touch the soft parts of your body when you've not sanitized or washed your hands. This is the only way we can survive COVID-19. Priscilla, in just 4 days, we've lost 15 prominent people, among which that have succumbed to COVID-19 is the former, that is a permanent secretary, to that is the judiciary, that is Kagole Chivumbi, one of the people that even has been in our neighborhood, that is in Seguku Katale. So this is something that each family, like Felix said, has tested, or they're trying to avoid someone who is under self-isolation to avoid the spread of COVID-19 to their loved ones. So please, the biggest achievement on daily is ensuring that you return home without COVID-19.
Well, of course, something also for us to look out for is at least for our children. Now, there have been a couple of people who are coming out to give home remedies to avoid COVID-19, and for those who actually already have COVID, there are also many other things that we can do. Let us also heed to some of these things. They may not be scientifically proven, but at least there are people who are giving the testimonies about them. For example, exercising and breath exercises are the kind of foods to take, the kind of foods to avoid, and also probably to self-isolate. Now, much and more of that is what we'll be giving you in our program today. Now, today being Monday, remember we'll be looking at our newsreel. We'll be looking at our GMU agenda, taking you through the papers, the weather, and also the traffic. But before we do that, let us take you through our local stories, and thereafter we'll also be looking at our international stories.
In our local stories, we look at residents of Nakawa that have called upon government to improve sensitization regarding COVID-19. That is the residents led by the elected member of parliament, that is Ronald Barimwezo, have called upon government to ensure that people get no knowledge regarding COVID-19. Nakawa East Member of Parliament, Engineer Ronald Barimwezo, was conducting a door-to-door sensitization on COVID-19. He said this was a result of increased cases in the area, where he noticed that unless people are given more information, some are acting and they are complying, whereas others have not gotten sufficient information to guide how best they can avoid succumbing or contracting COVID-19.
Away from that, we get to look at the recently appointed Prime Minister, who is also the one Member of Parliament, Kakumiro District, Robinana Banja, having appreciated President Yoweri Museveni for appointing her the first woman Premier and promised to perform with distinction in the service of her country. Nabanja, who was previously the Minister of State for Health General Duties, is also a former MP Gret Chibale, RDC Busia, Palisa and Budaka, among others. She was, before her appointment as State Minister for Health, she was a commissioner in the 10th Parliament. Nabanja also played a big role in Greta Chibale politics, especially in lobbying for the community development projects like health centers, schools, roads, and other poverty-alleviated related projects. Nabanja promises to continue serving the country and the communities at all levels, and encouraged the appointed ministers that after the vetting committee has done its work, they should together work for the good of all Ugandans and the NRM party.
Well, likely the vetting committee will be sitting today, and we hope thereafter we'll be having so many celebrating after they have been vetted and approved by the committee. Now we'll move to wildlife, where Queen Elizabeth National Park has recorded an increase in the number of wild animals of late. This has been attributed to a decline in poaching in the communities through sensitization meetings about the value of wildlife conservation. Located about 383 kilometers away from the capital of Kampala via Masakambara Highway Road, the park is the most visited in all tourist destinations in Uganda. Found in southwestern Uganda, about 40 kilometers from Kampala, Queen Elizabeth National Park is Uganda's second largest and most popular conservation area, sitting on about 700 square miles of land. The park was founded in 1952 as Kazinga Channel National Park, a combination of Lake George and Lake Edward Game Reserve, and renamed Queen Elizabeth National Park in 1954 after the Queen of England. The park is the most visited of 10 national parks and 13 conservation areas in Uganda. The park is currently experiencing a wildlife boom with 618 bird species, and which makes it the 6th highest diversity in the world and the highest in Africa. In addition to is 10 species of chimpanzees, Congo lions, African leopards, elephants, buffaloes, and hippopotamus. The chief warden, Queen Elizabeth Conservation Area, Pontius Ezuma, said elephant species have surpassed the 3,953 mark registered before COVID-19, and the buffaloes are now at 1,700.
Well, I think that this increase in number of animals across is because of COVID-19. Ask me why.
Why?
Well, simply because, you know, the national parks have been arrested from so many guests and tourists that come in, and every time these people come in, there's something that happens when there's interruption in the natural state upon which some of these animals live. You will note that some of these animals, they're available for you to see between 5 a.m. and maybe 9 a.m. After 9 a.m. they disappear because they know now there's encroachment of other people that are in their territory, so they go into hiding. And then they don't have the freedom to be animals and, you know, procreate. But now, because COVID-19 caused the tourism sector to kind of be in a lockdown, you had them enjoying their natural habitats, and they ended up procreating, hence the increase. So,
well, I would buy that,
things.
but I also want to attribute this to deliberate effort by Uganda Wildlife Authority to sensitize communities, and of course the security personnel in this country that have upped their game in fighting poaching, because usually one of the areas was poaching. These animals were being killed day in, day out, and communities were not appreciating actually why they're only seeing the white foreigners coming into these communities.
And because there was increased security because of COVID-19 guidelines, LDUs and the likes. So all things work together for good. COVID is a positive thing. The way you perceive it is the way you can actually get milking it. I mean, there are businesses that came up because of COVID-19, online businesses. Now
just reminding me of a friend who told me of a term, painful joy. Was telling me, yes, there is a pain, but there's a joy that some people are discovering opportunity. Well, we have the international news man ready to fly us out of Uganda to a couple of countries in just a few minutes.
Well, of course, now we'll be looking at the easing of the lockdown in England will be delayed by at least 4 weeks. Now, senior ministers have also signed off a decision to delay the lifting of coronavirus restrictions in England beyond the 21st of June. Now, government sources have told BBC most current rules will remain for another 4 weeks after this particular date. Now, this means that the nightclubs will stay closed and people will be encouraged to still work from home where possible. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to confirm the delay later at a press conference. However, the extension will be put on Commons into the Commons vote this month and could trigger a sizable conversation, at least with the Conservatives. Now, still looking at international stories, Israel's new Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has vowed to unite the new nations, fried by 4 elections in 4 years of political stalemate. He also said that the government will work for the sake of all people, adding that the priorities would be reform in education, health, and cutting red tape. Now, the right-wing nationalists will lead an unprecedented coalition of parties backed by the Prime Minister's Sundays, that is a 60 years to 59 vote. He succeeds Benjamin Netanyahu, who was forced out of office after 12 years, and Bennett, leader of Yamin party, will be Prime Minister until September 2023 as part of the power-sharing deal. Now, he will then hand over power to Yair Lapid, head of the centralist Yesh Aid, for further 2 years. Now back to Africa, while we're looking at Ethiopia's Tigray crisis. The G7 summit calls for access for aid and workers. The G7 group has called for unimpeded access for aid workers in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, where UN says at least 350 people are living in famine conditions. The world's 7 largest so-called advanced economies also demanded an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of Eritrean troops. But also the Eritreans are fighting alongside government forces against local rebels. Now, Ethiopia denies there is a famine and says Eritreans have begun to leave. Meeting in the UK, the G7 group, which includes US, the EU, UK, also said they would donate at least billions of COVID-19 vaccines to poorer countries by next year, and at least raise 100 billion, that is US dollars, to help them cut carbon emissions. that's basically what's trending also in the international stories. We see that the G7 did come out to meet, I think 2 days ago. A couple of resolutions they came out with in terms of Africa, COVID-19, but they promised more medic, that is by next year. I don't know how many people would have lost lives by next year. And one of the biggest crises that African countries and all third world countries are facing is the unavailability of vaccines. Last time we had a statement by Dr. Atwili, who came out to mention that even if they had some money to buy, there is nowhere to buy because of the stampeding for all countries, and of course priority will go for these most developed countries. Well, all we're left with is to be able to prevent the spread of COVID-19, do as much as possible as we can do to prevent the spread, because clearly, at least in Uganda, they have been said that vaccines are over. The president had promised vaccination this week that ended. We don't know how far that has come. There's a lot of promises and
the
promises.
The president also had made mention that the COVID-19 medicine that had been worked on by the likes of Dr. Munesero and the team, it was supposed to be on market right now, because now is the time that we need that medicine more than ever, and I'm surprised that it's not yet really available on the markets, and yet this would have been partially a good solution to help with the urgency that we're having of COVID-19. I don't know about you guys, but everywhere, literally, I spent the whole weekend in the house in consideration that if I step out of the house and meet someone or engage with some, group of sorts, I'm going to come back to the house and then spread it to someone else, and then my community alone would have to succumb to COVID-19. But if this drug can be made available to the market, then we would be using it as a solution right now. Given that it's the younger generation that is now getting COVID-19, they're not pre-existing conditions for them as much as in the older senior citizens of this country, which means that adaptation to this medicine would be easy. So I call upon the Ministry of Health, honestly, to have this drug tested and all levels of testing done at the speediest time, so that we can be able to adapt it into the Ugandan medicine.
Well, we just pray that they'll expedite the process. However, we also have another breakthrough that is in the treatment of COVID-19, where our forces, that the UPDF, have begun mass production of oxygen. We were told that at least an hour they can manufacture about 12 cylinders, that is of about 50 liters of oxygen. Previously, they have been doing this manufacturing, but at a small scale, just for the Air Force, because they fly on high altitudes and they need oxygen. But now we know that they have done that, and they already distributed cylinders, that is to Mulago National Referral Hospital. So that is a breakthrough in one way or the other. But Priscilla, you said over the weekend you chose to remain in-house to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Well, I experienced some nasty, I had an emergency, I had really something I was supposed to do to attend to. That was a sick animal, so I had traveled along Chengera, and guess what I witnessed? I'd never seen this before. As I was approaching Busega roundabout, there's a bit of jam. I see this funeral service van that has Wise Funeral Service, and the wind, it was not tinted, so you could see a casket, and inside was people putting on personal protective equipment, both the driver, the co-driver, then also those at the back. And the interesting bit of it was the border. I know you're in jam. So somehow these border riders noticed that this was an ambulance carrying a casket containing a body of a person who has died of COVID-19. There they were hooting, "Give way, Mutuyambo, wa COVID. And well, it caught my attention. So looking through, like, oh God. And when I was returning, still I met another ambulance, funeral van, carrying still a body. So I passed by the pump to refuel, and I asked this person, how often? He told me, brother, for us to even think maybe we don't have the right statistics regarding death, that this time Masaka Road is a busy road. We see about 2 to 3 these vehicles, these funeral service vehicles, transporting people, and that means that the situation is really, really very bad. So wherever you are, you must be very conscious. You must know that COVID is real, and you must ensure that as you leave home, whatever you could require to return when you've not contracted COVID-19. Don't forget your mask. Don't forget a sanitizer. Also, you will have to give up some places, even if it's money, for the safety of your people. Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, follow up on those updates for COVID-19 in regards from the Ministry of Health and the concerned task forces. The UBC will be giving them to you live on our Twitter handle, which is UBC TV Uganda. But you can wake up to Good Morning Uganda with Felix, Priscilla and Robert as we continue this journey on YouTube, that is UBC Television Uganda, on Facebook, UBC TV. This morning, we will be talking about the 2021-2022 budget and management of this budget for the next year. What is it going to look like in spectrum? And we do have a guest that will be giving us an analysis to that. And of course, the G7 did talk about weather and climate and made a commitment. We will see how we're going to be benefiting from that commitment and also benefiting from the COVID-19 commitment of 1 billion vaccines by next year. Hopefully, that will be including Uganda as some of the beneficiaries. But the journey still continues. We will be crowning it up with sports updates from Ruben P. Machivinango. The Olympics countdown is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Any time now, we have different teams that are going to be representing Uganda. Those are conversations that we will be following through here on Good Morning Uganda. Of course, the Euros 2020, but all those you must stick around to enjoy them. We now get into our special song for the day. As we come back, we will look into mortality rate.
I will not get tired or fed up of reminding you continuously that COVID-19 is here, and you must ensure that you're not part of the statistics because you are inspiration. The reason you wake up very early in the morning is because you're there, and we treasure you and we want you alive here on Good Morning Uganda. And one of the ways that we all believe, we grew up hearing this phrase, prevention is better than cure. And how best, apart from perfecting the soaps, also ensure that you consume products that are going to boost your immune system. And among the products are Hallelujah products. Hallelujah ginger tea drink that has got ginger, that has got a lot of ingredients that boost your immune system, and Hallelujah turmeric drink. These are drinks that must be part of your fridge, must be part of your daily routine of what you consume. Once again, I'm Kirabo Nyonyintono with Priscilla Nalwoga and Felix Nkunda. It's time we look at our newsreel story, and this time you're looking at still the health sector, more so maternal and child health, where in Karamoja, religious leaders have come together to drum drums of sensitization to ensure that people are more aware of how best they can prevent this death. No woman should die while giving birth or shortly after giving birth. So statistics indicate that, well, West Nile and Karamoja region are more affected. Just like any other developing country, every 1 million births, we lose 343 mothers in this struggle. And this is something we've talked over and over, despite a number of government interventions aimed at this. Felix, when you talk about maternal and child health in Uganda, of course, this is we know that third world countries, this is one of the biggest challenges. But we also know that there are some elements that promote this away from lack of health services present. There are some other elements. So today, religious leaders are calling for sensitization. We want to look at how best can we ensure that we reduce this death in Uganda.
Yeah, well, of course, the conversation comes in timely, Robert. What's more is that this conversation has become quite articulate in times of COVID-19, and that's a matter of fact. And if you're to look at the statistics before 2019 and the aftermath of the same, you will see that there's a trajected great increase in terms of mortality rate. Now, if we want to take a literal connivance towards what mortality rate would be, you would be looking at the number of people or death that is related to pregnancy, but in its later stages. Some scholars will attribute it to later stages, and as we were saying earlier, that you may look at probably the before 42 hours before actual and the post as well, that we could be considering about 2 days. But the most dire in this discussion is that we have most third world countries have or lose a lot of women in the process of pregnancy, even at early stages. The reasons are quite many, as you said. That one of the major reasons in traditional society, which is where we fall as a country, is the lack of relevant knowledge. You may know of the word called maternal health care in terms of women, maternal health care. Now, when someone gets pregnant, because they are carrying a life, their own life is at risk. And that's what entails. That's why the word maternal health care became so important. That's why women, unlike before, now it is a must for them to do what we call antenatals. Now, the purpose for antenatal is basically to reduce on mortality rate. What was the purpose? Because there are things that are discovered during antenatals that would be causes of death later on. Now, the big question is, and when you look at, if you want to look at regional access to what we call antenatal or maternal health, let's look at the region, say in Karamoja, where the study was done. How accessible, because there are 2 or 3 things we must put into consideration: accessibility, availability, and knowledge. Now, let's start with the first one. How accessible are medical services in terms of the region?
Still a big challenge there. We must
exactly, because if medical health is still a challenge in Kampala, you can imagine what happens in the outskirts. Look at availability. In as much as it is not, because it could be there but not accessible, but now is it even available? Okay, for where it is, do you have the relevant people to carry it out? Do you have the relevant kits that may contain medic, machinery, even professions?
And can it also service the population that we're talking about that falls under the care for maternal health and child care?
The population that needs that kind of care. But lastly is information. Now, we grew up knowing that information is power. Do the people have the right information about maternal health? In regions, you go to Busoga, where it is anticipated that people, the pregnancy rates are higher there in teenagers. Do you know why that happens? One of the reasons is lack of relevant information. You get the point. That we still have in this country traditions that still look at children as a source of income, a source of wealth. Okay? If we still have marriages that are conducted in this country as early as 12 years. So, as early as 12 years, we have people who are giving birth. Do we have the right information in the domain?
And actually, on that, Felix, it is also, research has proven that the younger a lady gives birth, the more risks there are for them to not go through the process. That is why you see most of these rates going high, like you've pointed out. If young girls are conceiving, of course, their body, physically, maybe some may look like they can, but the body, organs, the body is not yet ready. And that is why we are seeing many of the teenage girls that give birth, sometimes a number of them die in the process, and hence raising maternal mortality in this country. So you rightly noted a very important point. Well,
there's just something, Robert, let me just say this lastly. When you look at the Abuja Declaration, it was a convention, basically, okay, let's call it a declaration that was signed by a number of countries, and majorly African countries. And one of the backbones as to why there was compellment, if I may use that word, to most of the African countries to make subscription of about 15% of their annual budget to health. One of the major aspects that was meant to be cured was maternal deaths. But the big question is, how many governments, if we go to go particular, how many times has Uganda subscribed 15% of its budgetary allocation to health? Now, in as much as we talk at the other, what we call circumstantial causes, there is also a major challenge in terms of health funding, generally as a country. If the right things were in the for example, let me just end with this. There's a case of Sehad and 3 others versus the Attorney General. It's basically about maternal health. In one of the findings of that case, it was brought to the knowledge of court that today in Uganda people die even when they get to hospital, which that's all they have to do. Because the belief is that, Kirabo, if you're sick and you're able to get yourself to a hospital, that should be savior for you. You get the point? But on these statistics you're reading, we should question ourselves, how many of them die in hospitals?
Yes,
you may be surprised. There are more than the people actually who don't die in hospital. Now, what does that mean? It means the problem may not necessarily sit in the lack of information, but probably also sit in the absence of good facilitation in terms of health care, and that is in hospitals.
It may sit in the absence of health care, but also it may sit in the fact that people delay in making the decision to go to health facilities that are available, because much as there's limitation, but still there's some availability. But certain times, especially in communities that are still practicing a lot of traditional cultures around maternal health and child care, before they actually consider the option of going to the hospital, they would rather try out everything else traditionally before they get to that alternative. And they get to that alternative as a last-minute resort. And that also brings about the high rates of mortality rate that we have when it comes to maternal health.
And of course, knowing that we still have a problem of traditional birth attendants. I was carrying out some research for some program on maternal health, and they noticed that we still have communities that believe that if Priscilla's mother, I'm not saying she did, I'm just using your name as an example, that in case Priscilla's mother went to a traditional birth attendant and it went right, so the mother will recommend that daughter that please don't go to those complicated health facilities. There's this lady on our village, she's perfected the art, and please go to that lady. Now, along the way, they recognize that maybe this needs cesarean, it's complicated, and then they rush this daughter to a health facility where it's too late. They don't, the doctor, maybe it's a health center 3, a health center 4, and it needs a referral hospital. Along the way, or just after reaching hospital, this lady will die, and we have these effects. We also have a challenge where men getting on board. You know, it's all about, these are women issues. Sometimes transportation is needed. The man must provide transport. And there's, but my mother, they just walked. My mother, no. You can. So the male flock have to be involved in this, but also must ensure that these funny traditions that we still cling to, traditional birth and all that, are things we eliminate and have proper antenatal, as Felix said, to prevent some of these
in response
issues.
to the traditional birth attendants, they have been there and they continue to exist. Traditional birth attendancy is a tradition that is being practiced globally, not just in Uganda, but actually you'll be surprised that the rich actually appreciate so much traditional birth attendancy compared to going to hospital. However, again, the complication or the challenge is that the traditional birth attendants that we have in our communities have not been sensitized by the medical environment about when it gets complicated, what do they do? There's a person that I know who did a journey, a series on their traditional birth, and they did it in their household, in their bathroom. But what they did is that, of course, they had to engage with the hospital because they desired to have their child traditionally. But they engaged with the hospital, they got a doctor, and they kept the doctor in the loophole of every procedure that they were going through with the traditional birth. Up to the point that when it actually happened, there was an ambulance that was outside the door, just in case of a complication uprising.
That sounds more luxurious.
No, that is simply because they had done their research and they had appreciated that, yes, this is maternal health that we're talking about. Anything can happen, because for maternal health, there's no script that this will happen, this will not happen. Every case is individual best, and it comes out of so many things that you cannot really attach or pinpoint up until the uprising of the case itself.
This brings to the components of maternal health.
Yes, so when we talk about the components of the maternal health, as Felix had rightly said, yes, it could be just hours before pregnancy, post hours after pregnancy. But for me, maternal health is actually the whole process that a woman gets through from conceiving right to giving birth, and even post giving birth. What is the health and the care that is being given to this woman at those different stages of her being able to carry and bring life forth? Now, first of all, we have to get right back to things such as family planning. That is something that affects maternal health, because the nature of family planning is people adapt, does affect their body systems and may cause complications that we're not informed about because they were not that much knowledgeable about the family planning programs that they're on. Personal prescriptions.
Young girls today that are taking pills.
Yes, it's a consultation of Kirabo. What are you using? This one is working for us, and someone else.
Some are using emergency contraceptives.
Thank you
as if more often. And you see, these all have implications. It's just about some pills, these work, that work, yes.
Let's talk about reproductive health services and information that is available to people out there. We have most recently, since COVID-19, realized that there's so many teenage pregnancies. And this is also because of the reproductive health services that are out there, have they given as much information? Have they sensitized the young people as much about reproductive health so that they get to understand their bodies and how they work, and when the readiness you talked about, when is the best time and when is not the best time?
In some communities that is evil. What are you trying to tell? We've had Ministry of Health have, and also Ministry of Education, when it comes to sex education, just even issues of some people feel that is something that we should only tell people when we believe they are already traditional. She's getting married, you have the aunties. Now when you give children more information, maybe that would render them even vulnerable as they want to try out the information they have. But
so
unfortunately,
that's one angle, that's a component.
But they rather get it, they better get the right information than having the wrong information.
They will later affect the maternal health and the child health of any person who's going to give birth. Then we move into the procedure of after she has conceived, does she have the antenatal care? Has she received it at the right time? Because some women, most especially in upcountry areas, they tend to respond to this antenatal at later stages, when maybe they're in their 7th month and some sort of complication has come up. Then they will go to the hospital and make a consultation, and the doctors will realize that, hey, you have actually not been on an antenatal program yet, which delays it and may complicate things for that mother during and after giving birth. So that information also, there's also postnatal, the care of this mother after giving birth, because so many women have gotten so many complications because of the pills they've been on and so forth. They end up having delayed bleeding for up to a week, and they are not aware why they're going through this, and yet they have been discharged from the hospital saying that, no, just pad yourself, it will go away. And yet that's a complication that could lead. I have an auntie who actually passed away. 2 days of bleeding. She was in the hospital, but the doctors were actually not conversant with that kind of situation, and she ended up losing her life, leaving a born child motherless. There's also the fact that there's newborn and child healthcare services that have now been brought about through health, knowledge and awareness. But this information is not available on the market. Information of what should a child be taken through after you've given birth, in terms of immunization, in terms of the checkups that your child must go through, to ensure that by the time you step out of this hospital, you have a healthy baby. Now, because the hospital does not have that information, they will not give it to the mother, and the mother will be ignorant, and for them, immediately, I know some women, they will go to Mulago, give birth this morning, this evening, she will be back home.
And she's praised.
And she's praised.
She's praised. She just gives birth and she's back and she's living a normal life. But also a very important issue, a factor that Felix brought in, is facilities available. I witnessed this when a mother gave birth to a child and the child required to go to a nursery. You know, when the child either is given birth, the mother's given birth, but there are some complications. But I want to tell you, Priscilla, very few hospitals have these facilities. So we get to have a number of children die. And even those that have these facilities, they are damn expensive. Damn expensive. A child goes to nursery, I want to tell you, the father, you just know that this is a massive expenditure I'm going to go in.
But you see, Robert, there's something that you may not be able to run away from in terms of healthcare in this country. That is the unnecessary commercialization of healthcare. And this is general, not only in terms of maternal healthcare, but generally. I would just give you an example of, I have seen some hospitals, and I have been privileged to even be part of the litigation against such hospitals. And this is something that should be addressed probably by government or even the facilities that bring together doctors or these hospitals. Some hospitals pride in earning from lies in terms of healthcare. For example, there are hospitals in Uganda here that are known for they would lie about a condition, either for the baby or for the mother, for them to earn, you know.
I have experienced that, honestly, by the way. There's a hospital here in Kampala, a prominent hospital. A friend of mine gave birth from there, and they were told that this is what they're going to tell you. You're fine. This is what they're going to tell you. And true to it, a few weeks before she gave birth, the doctor came up with a complication. So her friend told her that go to another hospital and get two other checkups and to verify that one doctor is saying. And it turns out that it was wrong information. So
honestly, because I've confronted it a number of times, and even with my personal experience, even when I was dealing with my own child. But it took my family to make a decision. And my mom was like, hey, look here, I've been through this a number of times. I think there's something not right. And that was really true. Now, what am I saying is that today, as you have a number of causes like traditional methods, poverty, absence of medical, whatever, and all these other things, now on top of a list, you may want to include unprofessionalism. And this is mostly evidenced by financial interest of institutions and even individuals. That's quite true. But also corruption. There's a lot of corruption in the corridors of, basically, you know, and sort of like it's been a habit. You go to Mulago. Everyone who has been in Mulago has a story about maternity and how corrupt people are. One of my students that I used to lecture at the university, she came out and she gave a very heartbreaking experience. She told me she was in Mulago and she was almost dying. And they told her, that's not a big deal if you can't raise just 20,000 shillings. That was her personal story. She's like, I almost died. I had to get the 20. It's sad. And you will be shocked. You will be shocked that most of the deaths attributed to maternal health in this country may be human causes.
Definitely. Yes.
These are not natural deaths. That's why earlier, Robert, I told you that as long as someone gets themselves to hospital, that should be their safe haven.
Yes.
But the question is, in these statistics they read for us, how many people die in hospital vis-a-vis those out of hospital? So then we'll be able to address the problem. Is the problem people who don't get to hospital before you bring in the issue of traditional births and what? Those could be 2 in 20, 1 in... But the people who die in hospital, yes, death is there. Doctors will tell you someone can die even if... But there are those deaths that are avoidable.
Preventable.
Like in terms of corruption. And this is a matter of fact. It is known by everyone in government. But probably no one cares or no one is interested to assist. So that's why, as Robert normally says, that how about our communities, our families start to appreciate the fact that we should be thinking about having babies by choice. Not necessarily through chance, as you normally put it. It is something that we must take upon ourselves. And for the men out there, you must be responsible. It's only courtesy. It's only courtesy. Sometimes people never put in consideration the contribution of a man in terms of pregnancy. But let me tell you, even if you're not available, make the necessities available.
I love that. Even if you're not available, make the necessities available. It takes 2 to tango. For every human being on earth, except Jesus Christ, whom we read about, where the Virgin Mary conceived by the Holy Spirit, there is a male and there is a female involved. Let's be responsible. Let's work together. And to government, please, let's have available, affordable, and effective health services. So by this, when we sensitize our communities and they know that going to hospitals is a solution, we will greatly fight. That is maternal and child health in Uganda. Have a lovely day, and we'll be returning with press review actually. Then we'll have Priscilla who will be taking us through traffic updates, and of course we'll have Ruben to take you through a GMU agenda. My team is still awake, and I believe you're still awake. That's when I said have a lovely day. I was like, yes. Oh, that's not yet over. We're here till the hour of 9. We'll return shortly.
Digital tax stamps are applied to goods or their packaging with security features or codes to avoid forging of goods and enable tracking and tracing capabilities.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and neither sustains us all. That enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Hallelujah Jingati drink and Hallelujah Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Hallelujah Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Hallelujah from all shops around.
Well, my mother and father always told me that during the bush show, I wasn't around, but they told me that you had to be on high alert because anything could happen anytime. This time it's not a war of guns. It's a war of a virus. It's a war of a pandemic. And how best do you survive? By protecting yourself. Hope you're alert, you're awake, and you are perfecting the soaps. It's time we look at what is trending in the print media, and COVID-19 issues dominate most of the newspapers and the tabloids this morning. I'm holding the New Vision, and a very big headline there is UPDF in mass production of, that is medical oxygen. That is a major breakthrough, and kudos to our armed forces. But still, on a sad note, over 15 prominent people succumbed to COVID-19 in just 4 days. Among these, we have Cedric, Aline Mohebewe, we have Manzi, that is to Bwine, Patrick, but most prominent, well, that's the person I talked about on Sunday. That is from PS, that is to the judiciary, Kagole Chivumbi, who succumbed to COVID-19 on Sunday. Our condolences to the family and a friend of mine, Barbara Namisango, plus that is the mother. Still in the New Vision, we look at that is Senior 2 and Senior 3, Mathematics, Physics, Chemistry, and Biology. Still, former Vice President Sekande Bukenya speak out. The New Vision gives you more. And at home, COVID patients narrate insightful experience. Yes, Felix.
Of course, in the Daily Monitor, police arrests over 10 COVID vaccine thefts. Wow, okay. And we're looking at police detectives have widened criminal investigations after they seized 600 doses of the government coronavirus vaccines and other hospital equipment from 2 private pharmacies in Kampala. Now, travel bans, hundreds trek as inter-district transport ban bites there. We see people crossing the bridge from... okay. And Netanyahu out as new Israel government approved, and toothpicks, the gum nightmare. And of course, Rwanda forces abduct UPDF soldiers at the border. Radio lessons start today, and Kagole Chivumbi dies. Now, inside the paper, again, we'll be looking at, from the archives here, left to right, President Museveni there, then Prime Minister Chintu Musoke, Finance Minister Mayanja Nkanji, and Henry Kayechemba. That is a 10 budget reading in 1996. Now, of course, today in history, the Greenfield Tower fire killed 72, and President Mbeki sacks his deputy. But of course, they give you also the statistics on COVID and how we're faring.
Still in the New Vision, know your Member of Parliament, Agnes Nandutu, that is woman MP Bududa and designate Minister of State for Karamoja Affairs. Still, we look at, that is Helen Amaso, that is MP persons with disabilities. Statistics, COVID-19 new death 5, then confirmed cases now 1,727 new confirmed cases. Total death 428. Please not be part of these statistics. Perfect the SOPs. Looking at today in history, it was on this date, the 14th of June, but the year 1962, when Bunyoro, Ankole, Toro, and Busoga made demands. Which demands? It is in the New Vision, but also on the same date, the 14th of May, the year 1990, Liberians march to protest killings, still in the New Vision there. Sports, Felix.
Now in sports, Tokyo-bound team, that is Chesang, optimistic there, and European Championship, Sterling helps down Croatia, and cricket plans a resumption in Cranes, that is action. Now no explanation yet for Eriksen's collapse, and of course some multi-choice explores Euro experience, and of course talent too big, and synergy unbeaten run in semi-final there. But of course also Matthew Okema, death robe Chadonor Club of Rugby, loving leader there, and Woodball makes COVID vaccination mandatory for all players.
Well, there is so much regarding how Christian cheated death, but also statistics regarding the Euro 20, the fixtures and results there for you. Then all skateboard, that is the Uganda Skateboard Union, has acquired another rink of their skaters at that is a Kintale Skate Park in Kampala. But don't forget that these and more, Ruben will be here to give you all those catchy, interesting stories in the world of sports. Now, Felix, radio studies or lessons are starting today. In Hoima, police over the weekend rounded up a school where they found they were teaching and teachers were present.
Well, you can imagine how short-minded people can be.
And the RDC insists that don't only arrest the students and the teachers, but also go for the parents. Would you do the same?
Definitely. I think this is the best time for us to come out all-handed in terms of enforcing COVID-19 standard operating procedures.
If you're a parent and your child is, Daddy, I'm missing out, my colleagues are studying and they're at school.
There are things you don't tell me as a child. There are things you don't tell me. Are you the first to study?
Or are you the last to?
Well, of course, we will also go to traffic update. Priscilla there. Priscilla, morning once again.
That we are having of Ugandans. Surprising to see that they're choosing to still continue with some. Let me ask whoever is watching, really, when you have your child going to school, as a parent, if that child loses their life because of COVID-19, are you still going to pay for their school fees? As a parent, while you're educating this child and you contract COVID-19, is your family still going to be okay because you wanted to teach more than you care for your life? Above anything else, the most important gift, the most expensive gift that you and I have is life. And so if you don't take care of your life in such a time as this, Zikusanze would what Mr. President say was full of sayings. Anyway, speaking of Zikusanze, I don't know where Zikusanze is today when we get to look at the traffic updates this morning. Monday morning, it's a dawn of a new week and we expect a lot of that in terms of traffic jam building up. However, because schools are on lockdown, which have been majority causes of traffic early in the mornings, you will be surprised that some of your routes are actually opened up in terms of traffic. Now, such of the routes in consideration is the main route that brings in traffic from the eastern part of Uganda into the heart of the city, and that is through Nakawa, which is the Kampala-Jinja highway. This morning, surprised to note that the traffic jam is only at the cross junctions or the intersections. There is where you do have some jam that will be building up. Now we're looking at the area of Nakawa where you have the business park, where you do have the market on the other end, and you also have the trading center down there. These all would be contributing to the flow of traffic jam this morning. Also, there is a bus and taxi park here, but because of the new COVID-19 SOPs, strict guidelines guidelines, those have equally eased on the flow of traffic on the road. To the extent that you only have orange zones here for the traffic lights at Nakawa, which would ideally be a red zone stretching all the way into the rest of Nakawa. Now we get to see the rest of this route and see how it's actually building up into Spear Motors. Now all this would ideally, especially for traffic moving in from Kampala into Nakawa Banda Chireka, would be literally a red zone. But this morning past Katalima Road, it's actually a clear route and a green zone, meaning that there's no traffic there. You will only find the next traffic area code with the cross junction there for what you have as Ntinda Road cross junctioning with the Kampala Jinja Highway, which is expected, of course, but you do have funders there to manage the traffic on that route. Then surprising to note that you do have a long stretch of traffic that is building up around Chambago and stretching all the way into Spear Motors for traffic that is coming in from the eastern part of Uganda, Bwegere. Most especially, you do have trucks that have now to take longer routes or longer time on their routes. And that is into the traffic of the red zone that you're seeing for traffic moving into Spear Motors. But please also note, because there are industries here, there's a Pepsi here and a couple of other industries on the upper side. Of course, you do have foam industries that are having their factories working right now, and so trucks are also making this particular area code a busy route, which would explain the red zones and the orange zones on either side of the route. You go past that, it may be pretty much clear. Now I want to get into Ntinda and stop by Naguru Police Barracks to all their funders that have committed to help in the fight against COVID-19. We want to say thank you so much for putting your life on the front line and ensuring that while you're putting your life on the front line, you're actually wearing masks. I do commend you highly for putting the SOPs into reality yourself. Now from Ntinda Road, we get past Naguru Police Barracks. We don't see any much traffic. KCCA division officers for Nakawa do not have any traffic building up around there. Against the business park in Henley, which is having more industries coming up in this area, you will then see a little bit of jam building up on the Ntinda route there, where you do have a petrol station. And this is simply because these two are residential areas. They're going to definitely be bringing in traffic, and this traffic wants to access either Nakawa or they want to access Ntinda or Chambogo or the other areas en route. We get to see Katalima Road. If you use Katalima Road and stretch it back to Kawa, how does it look like this morning? Well, you get to see that past Naguru Police Barracks equally and the police headquarters, you don't have much jam except in the sharp corner, and Katalima Road will bring you straight back to Nakawa, which is equally a clear road for you to come out from. That would be a good consideration for you. Also, you can come from the Naguru Police Headquarters and then make your way connect to the Naguru Avenue, and this one will drop you on Naguru Road, and there you can easily land in the Lugogo bypass to avoid the traffic jam that is in the Nakawa area, and to also avoid the two traffic lights that you will have to get through. The one at Nakawa where you do have to toll, and then the one that is at Chadondo Rugby Grounds. You can avoid those two by using Naguru Connect to Lugogo bypass, and then perhaps get into Wampewa Avenue, and that way you get to step into the Airtel roundabout. We get to see the Airtel roundabout this morning and how the traffic is flowing in that area. You get to use through Wampewa Avenue, and you get to see equally more so green zones than the red zones that are expected around the Ministry of Internal Affairs this morning. So that is how the traffic is looking like this morning. Of course, a red zone has built up on the Kampala Jinja Highway, the traffic lights there, and that is simply because of consideration of the traffic lights that are managing it, and these cars have been put to a hold. Equally, cars from Sufurule have been put to a hold, giving room for the main route to actually take precedence in terms of movement of vehicles. Those are the traffic updates for people that are accessing the heart of the city from the Nakawa division. Speaking of Nakawa division that harbors the police headquarters, Assistant Inspector General of Police Afande Kasinje has come out to remind the police officers on the road to be vigilant, to also serve the country with passion and ensure that they help put the SOPs into directive. So if you're caught on the wrong side of the arm, you're definitely going to suffer the consequences, and that will mean something out of your pockets, because they're no longer arresting you. They just give you a bill and you have to pay that bill. I've actually had an experience with these funders. They find you, especially on the road without a mask, you get arrested. No question. Even if it's just on your chin here, yes, you will get arrested. So be vigilant, be mindful, lest you end up on the wrong side of the law on a Monday morning as this. Now, speaking of Monday morning, we did come into Monday morning from the G7 summit that had a lot of conversations that included global climate. Speaking of global climate, Molen Kenyana joins us for yet another week of Good Morning Uganda. Good morning to you, Molen.
Yes, good morning, Priscilla.
How was your weekend? I spent it indoors. How did you spend your weekend?
I actually pretty much the same. I spent my weekend indoors. But I was looking out for a lot of good conversations over social media. And one of them was the G7 summit. There were a lot of memes that came in also through social media of how most of the members now were celebrating for the fact that one of the members from the previous summit was actually not around. And
Be more specific. Which member is this? Hit the nail on the head.
I think much of it was talking about Donald Trump, but with Biden in the picture, because he's now the president that is supporting all the climate change action in the US. So it was kind of a good expression to see him there and being committed to what he actually talked about when he became president of the United States, to continue and mend what had been broken among these members. So yeah, G17 was one of those good conversations that kept me going.
All right. I mean, so aside from the light moments where you had this summit having the royal family heavily engaged in the conversations and part of the meetings, the Queen having a nice light moment with the leaders of the world, you know, throwing in jokes there and there. Putting that aside, we get to look at the impact of this summit on global climate. Now, from this summit, they have committed $100 billion to global climate.
Yes, this is really good, and seeing them make this commitment of $100 billion in support of developing countries, this is something that we have.
They didn't call them developing countries; they called them poor countries.
Yeah. Because now you look at most of the countries that actually need this, for sure, are developing countries. And looking at them committing to this, I can only hope that this will be maintained. Because guess what? One of the commitments they have is actually the net zero emissions. If they are looking at countries that are polluting most, bringing out most of these emissions, and there is a net zero commitment, it means that even while we use these $100 billion contributions, it will help boost up countries with their nationally determined contributions. And I think Uganda is one of those that will benefit from this kind of commitment.
Well, while we look at Uganda, this conversation came up at the backbone of Brazil, the Amazon area continuing to struggle, especially with the wildfires that continue to engulf and eat up most parts of the Amazon, that have put a lot of pressure just on the government of Brazil not considering climate as part of their budgeting, and the president has actually been under a lot of criticism. In reflection of that, and here in Uganda, in terms of the budget that was recently read to us, and what has been given or apportioned to climate and global change, things like that, what do you have to say?
Yes, looking at, by the way, the Amazon, it is the biggest in terms of forest reserve, and if we see it struggling and leaders really being concerned, it is a global concern. But you look at also being able to make a commitment to preserve these forests. And the Amazon, even with that, it now holds the highest rate in wildfires, looking at the rate, and it's actually on an increasing rate. So it means that we are looking forward to more of this happening because of the frequency that is there right now. We also had, interesting enough, I was reading a story over the weekend about Mount K Forest Reserve in West Nile. And I think there are a lot of people that were convicted. 2 people actually convicted due to the logging, and 31 remanded. And this story was interesting enough because I now start to see the action of the police and the forest reserve managers actually coming up to support this action. So that was interesting for us here.
Well, speaking of which, that happened in the West Nile, where you had 33 people that were arrested for encroaching on the West Nile Forest Reserve. Now, one of these encroachments will include cultivation on the land. It could be just farming when it is illegal, because it's a place that has been designated strictly for forestry. And then you also have firewood, people cutting down trees because of firewood. Others are burning down the trees to actually make charcoal out of these. All these are illegal. Now, there's a place and time for each and every single one of these activities, just not in a reserved place for forestry. What is the impact of this on that region in the Nile, West Nile?
Yes, West Nile has been known to have really committed to keeping their forests intact. And it is actually a shame that we start to see this happening because these are some of the places in the area, the forests, some of those things in the area that do enhance their weather conditions over there. They are actually among the northern part of the country, the region that experiences most wet conditions in that region, meaning that these forests actually contribute a lot in terms of the weather conditions over that place. And now seeing all this come in, and also it kind of gets to me because these are the locals that are involved in some of these illegal activities. Now, if you as people living in West Nile are not concerned enough to see that what you're doing is actually bad for your region, then it's just a shame. But I still, I want to thank actually the police and the wildlife people there that really took on this action, because for the first time we're seeing justice really come in and all these people being held responsible for what they are doing wrong. So yeah, that's something that West Nile should really look out for, and as a community come together and make sure this is not happening. Stop all these illegal activities. I mean, selling off these trees for consumption, firewood, all this is really a small picture you're looking at in terms of what you could actually gain when we're talking about forests influencing the weather across the area. So yes, glad that West Nile continued to do that, Priscilla.
All right, well, thank you so much, Molen. I'm going to leave you in the hands of the expert Molen there to talk about more of these conversations. But remember, at 8 a.m. we do have a conversation about the 2021-2022 budget, the national budget and its management. And here to have the conversation with us, we'll be hosting Mr. Julius Kampwempwe to be giving us more of that dialogue. So stick around for 8 a.m. in Good Morning Uganda agenda.
Yes, thank you very much, Priscilla, for that, the traffic update and for the engagement. We do have our weekly projection and looking at what ICPAC is giving us this week, and at least until tomorrow, we do still see most areas that are likely to keep and remain dry across the country. And that includes the Lake Victoria Basin. This is the area that is in white across the country. When you see the area that is in white, that is where we expect a reduction in wet weather conditions. Actually, those will continue with mostly dry conditions. We do have part of the Kirabo region also in white across northern Kyoga and also northwestern Uganda. That is where we have Arua, Nebi. Those areas will remain quite dry. But where you see the kind of yellow colors, that's where we expect rains to pick up. So we do have southwestern Uganda and parts of midwestern. That is where we have also Ntoroko, Kabarole, and also parts of the Mount Elgon highlands. That is where we have Mbale, Bududa. Those areas are likely to pick up with wet weather conditions. And that also speaks more to northern Uganda, where you see those colors now starting to be in orange. That's where we do have quite a small percentage, up to 50%, that will likely to have rains over that area. But I can tell you, as we head on throughout the week, we will see more rains picking up only to the areas that are in yellow, actually. But the rest of the country, we do expect precipitation to be really across to 50%. Except for the white areas where we are likely to maintain those dry conditions. Now, that is still bad news for Kampala, I don't know whether bad news is relative. We are still going to expect those dry conditions. The sun will still keep up, and it's not just Kampala, still northern Choga. That is where we will also be dealing with most of those sunny conditions. We will take a look at our satellite for today. We do have most areas within the country that are still dealing with intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions across the country. And from what we have from our satellite, we do see much of the country that is still dealing with mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine this morning, but we do see clouds that are starting to develop. That is mostly across the northwestern part of the country. That is where we have Arua. We're also seeing rains that are in the forecast actually today morning across the western part of the country. That is where we have also Midwestern. Now this is a rain system that is starting to develop across this country, where you see the dark orange, yellow, green and blue. Now that is the area where we're having rains. Now this system is moving towards the western part of the country, and that will be bringing rains this morning across parts of Fort Portal and also Toroko. As the morning goes on, we do expect that system to proceed up to that area. We also see some of those clouds that are starting to develop. You see that deep blue there that is developing across northwestern part of the country, and that is where we also expect rains this morning as that system continues to develop. We also see the cloudy conditions that are over Mount Elgon Highlands, that is across Mbale, but that will only be keeping that area with intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Much sunshine will be coming in across parts of Kampala, also the western parts of Lake Victoria Basin. That is where we have Masaka. So yeah, the relative sunny conditions, because you know most people might actually prefer it sunny, so it's not that having no rains is bad news or good news, because it depends on how you prefer it actually. We also have that cloudy system that is developing across the northern part of the country. That is where we have Padel, Guru, that will be keeping it mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine. Actually, much sunshine will be coming in later as that cloud starts to clear up, and that will also extend into the afternoon. We do have our forecast for today morning across most areas within the country, but I can tell you most areas are likely to have intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. We do have, especially the Karamoja region, likely to maintain sunny conditions. Now across the central part of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Kampala, Mukono, Entebbe and Wakiso. That is where we're expecting mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine. We do have temperatures going up to 26 degrees. And also for southwestern part of the country, which is where we have Mbarara, Iva and Abushenyi, we do expect quite a warm morning, starting off at 27 degrees, but with sunny conditions expected over that area. That is where we have Rubirizi as well. Now for the central eastern parts of central, is where we have Ruwero, Wobulenzi, and Nakaseke, and Nakasongola also falls in that category. We do have a very warm morning at 28 degrees, but with a mix of clouds and sunshine. And that's actually later in the afternoon, we will be seeing more sunshine over that area. Now for eastern part of the country, the sun has already set in over that area, and it is one of those regions we expect to have more sunshine throughout the week. Temperatures this morning at 29 degrees, quite warm for morning over eastern Uganda, but with sunny conditions expected over that region. Now we do have parts of Mbale, Bududa, Sironko. That is where we're seeing clouds even now. We do expect that to continue throughout the entire morning. Temperatures will be at 26, but we will see more development in the afternoon, where we do expect some isolated showers over the area, but that will come in later in the afternoon. Well, western part of Lake Victoria Basin, that is where we have Masaka, Masaka, Kalisizo, Sembabule and Rakai. That is where we are expecting to have mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions, but temperatures will be at a pleasant 26 degrees over the area. Well, that is all we have for you in our weather updates today morning. Do follow our conversations mostly on Twitter, and we do have the Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up, where we will be looking at prospects within our budgets. Now, Robert will be here to give you a conversation and some of our guests that are coming into the show. Have a good morning. My name is Molin Kenyan.
Pick of the Day on UBC, brought to you by
Tulantende ku program obulamu bwo.